If you have outer hip pain, 9 times out of 10, it's a muscle weakness problem rather than a joint problem or a muscle flexibility problem. That means that most of the time, the solution is strengthening the muscle, not stretching the muscles, and fortunately also not having hip replacement. In this video, I'll share 5 of the top strengthening exercises for outer hip pain, starting from the easiest and progressing to the most complex. So exercise number 1 is probably one of the most common exercises, but also one of the ones that's most commonly messed up. And that one is called the clamshell. You may recognize it where you lay down on the ground and you open your legs up like this. Now, the goal of this is to strengthen the gluteus medius and the gluteus minimus, along with your hip external rotators. And those are, in fact, the muscles that you want to strengthen if you have outer hip pain, because most of the time, the tensor fasciae lata in the front of the hip is working too hard, and the muscles in the back of the hip are not working hard enough. Now, how you would do the clamshell correctly is rolling forwards and then putting your hand up on your hip to make sure that you don't roll backwards. By putting your hand up on your hip, you also ensure that you're activating your gluteal muscles in the back of the hip. So feel for the muscles with your fingers and roll yourself forwards, then make sure you only lift from the hip, not allowing yourself to roll backwards. If you roll back, you end up recruiting the tensor fasciae lata in the front of the hip, which is not what you want to do. So roll forwards like this, slight lift of the knee, squeezing the glute muscles, hold for ideally about 10 seconds, and then come back down. Now this is a pretty low level exercise. It does activate the muscles, but it doesn't strengthen them to any great extent. So this is really for people who either can't find their glute muscles or who have too much pain to actually bear weight on their leg. Now, a progression from here is a straight leg raise, again with hip external rotation. So you want to roll yourself forwards, like with the clam, put your hand up on your hip, and make sure you don't roll backwards as you start to lift your leg. You also want to make sure that you're keeping your toes pointed upwards and not allowing yourself to fall into internal rotation, which again will recruit the tensor fasciae lata. So take note where you feel this. If you feel it right here with the toes down, you're probably using the wrong muscles. If you rotate the toes up, you'll feel the muscles in the back of the hip kick in, and then it's just a very slight lift. Now, as a note, you may feel a little pull on the inner thigh there as well. If you have tight hip adductors or inner thigh muscles, you may very well feel a stretch or a pull on the inner thigh, but the muscles you should be using are in the back of the hip. Now, if you feel like you can't keep yourself rolled forwards, you can also lie up against a wall like this. Make sure you stay rolled forwards and then try to raise your heel up the wall while keeping the toes turned up and your body rolled forwards. But ideally, you do want to progress to doing standing exercises. And so those are going to be the next ones that we work on. These are the most important because usually when people have outer hip pain, other than when lying on their hip at night, it's usually when they're standing up or walking. So the first exercise is just going to be standing on one leg. And if you watch this channel regularly, you've probably seen me talk about this one before. It's absolutely one of the best strengthening exercises for your hip muscles, as well as a great balance exercise. Now there are some nuances to this. You're not just mindlessly standing on one leg. So put your weight over one leg. You want to try to keep your belt line parallel with the floor. So you don't want to allow your pelvis to drop down like that as you bear weight over one leg. You also don't want to shift your weight over to that side. And you also don't want to allow your knee to come inwards or your foot to flatten down. So think about doing a clamshell, kind of like when you were laying down. Turn out. So you're kind of doming your arch, putting your weight on the outer side of the foot and squeezing your buttock muscles. Then slowly shift your weight over to this leg, keeping your pelvis level with the floor, and then slowly pick the other leg up off the floor until you're fully on one leg. If you need to hold on to something for balance, that's okay. or if you need to slightly keep the toe of the other leg down on the floor until you can balance fully on one leg, that's okay too. Furthermore, if you have pain in your hip when you're standing fully on one leg, then take a little bit of weight with the opposite leg or by holding on to a cane so that you can do the exercise with minimal to no pain. Now, a progression from there is doing a lunge. Now, the single leg stand is an isometric exercise where you're standing and contracting the muscle while not moving it. But next we need to move into strengthening the muscles while using them. And so for this one, we're going to use a lunge. When you do a lunge, you can do either a forward lunge or a backwards lunge. But the more your knee goes over the toe, the more this becomes a quadricep dominant activity. The more your weight stays on the heel, the more it becomes a glute dominant activity. So we are going to do more of a backward lunge for this, where you're keeping your weight more on the heel. But what's really important in regards to outer hip pain is not so much the forward-backward motion, but the side-to-side motion. If you watch many people in a gym do a lunge, you'll see that their knee kind of drifts inwards as they do the lunge. And so you want to maintain that hip external rotation, knee over toes, or even thinking about going just a tiny bit outside of that. So taking a lunge forward like that, turning the knee outwards, and then coming back up. Doing it from a backwards lunge, stagger like that, turn the knee outwards, and go down just as far as you can comfortably. Again, if you need to hold on to something for balance, that's okay. And as you get stronger, you can progress deeper down into the lunge, but take note that you don't want to go deeper at the expense of losing the knee alignment. So make sure you keep hip, knee, toe alignment and go down as far as you feel comfortable going, progressing deeper with time. Focus on pressing through the heel, which will also activate your gluteus maximus to come back up. And then the final exercise is a progression from a lunge, which is most of your weight on the front leg, but still some on the back, to a single leg squat, where you are fully on one leg while moving. To do this, you should have become proficient with a single leg balance first, and also be fairly comfortable with a lunge. So to do a single leg squat, you can do this in two ways. You can do it with your leg out in front of you, and also with your leg in back of you. When your leg is in back of you, it encourages more of a forward trunk lean like this, kind of like you're going upstairs. When you do it with your leg out in front of you, it's more like you're going downstairs. So both variations are good, and they're probably both good to practice. Now, from a muscle activation standpoint, doing a single leg squat with your leg out in front of you is more of a quadricep dominant activity because your knee's going more forward over your toes and there's more pressure on your toes than on your heels. Conversely, when you lean your trunk forward and sit back with your weight more on your heel, that emphasizes the glutes a little bit more. So if you are looking for one that's better for hip pain, it's probably going to be the one where you have your leg behind you, but both are good because you do need to be able to go up and down stairs. So those were the 5 strengthening exercises to help if you have outer hip pain. If you'd like more tips to relieve hip pain, check out this playlist over here. But before you go, if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel so you can get notified of our future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.